Hello everyone, I'm Rupam and welcome you all to the episode number 16 of Intimacy Laws. And in today's episode, we are going to discuss about a very interesting dynamics which is the submission and master-slave dynamics. If you are thinking about the pornography or any other domain, it's not like that. The theology that we are going to discuss today is going to be around a very important neuroscience and a very important psychological aspects of the human beings. Understanding submission and the master slave dynamics is one of the quintessentials in different forms of relationship, including relationship with your own life. The way that you understand this topic and give a thought on this topic will make a significant difference in the way that you look into your life. We already know that one of the key things that human brain searches is not for success or is not for victories, but rather meaning. All of our brain searches for a meaning in life, and brain tries to act based on that meaning. And therefore, the way we understand the world, the theology and the philosophy, there is an underneath dynamics of why we exist, why we must continue to exist, what is the role that we perform in this world, what the world is going to get from us, what we can get in return from the world, why we were born, why we are going to die, how we are going to die, what we leave behind when we die, and all these important functions, all these important questions are the questions that drives our brain at the subconscious and unconscious level. And therefore, Albert Camus, who is second most youngest to have won Nobel Prize in Literature, a Algerian French writer, and you must read his work, fascinating author. Albert Camus has said, "The life is absurd. All of us, we get suicidal thoughts, and not dying when those suicidal thought comes is in itself is absurd. Life searches for the meaning, and not many of us discover those meanings. And the very fact that we still live even without knowing the meaning, when the brain searches for the meaning, is extremely absurd. And therefore, in this episode, I am going to walk you through a very important dynamics of the dynamics of submission, dynamics of master-slave, dynamics of bondage, humiliation, pain, and with regard to this theology and philosophy, all of you can start finding a meaning of your life. When you find more meaning, your life will appear less absurd. Your brain will not live in absurdity, in a state of absurdity. And when those absurdities are removed from the brain can then focus on doing something completely without any confusion and doubts. So let's get straight started. Again, this time let me introduce myself at this moment for those of you who have picked up this video or picked up this episode from this episode. I'm Rupam, founder and CEO of Aculi Labs Private Limited, Bangalore, creator of Lifers, a multi-dimensional, in-depth life assessment system, and author of the book Intimacy Lost for Men, The Birth of the Lugal, a book that is written to make you intimate with your life, relationships, purpose, and give a stability of your brain as how to look into your life and various pursuits of the life. So let's get straight started into today's topic of submission. And in today's topic, you are going to learn many things about God, neuroscience, theology, philosophy. So it's going to be very interesting. And I'm pretty sure that just like all other classes, you're sitting with your pen paper, your pen and diary, and you are probably sharing this class or watching this class along with one another so that your understanding gets better. Learning is never about self-learning. When 2 or 3 of you learn together, then the amount of learnings that brain does and the discussion after the class, it is the one that helps you to affirm those learnings and then use those learnings easily in your life. So, what is submission? Alright, first, male, female, 2 brains. We already know that a significant amount of female energy goes into managing their reproductive system. So female brain works more or less from midbrain to neocortex, the next area of the brain. They are much more intuition driven, much more instinct driven, because the decision making and thinking takes a lot of energy. And if their brain starts giving that energy, allocating that energy to the executive function, that is prefrontal cortex of the brain, in that situation their overall reproductive function will come down, because the ovary and the other associated organs are not going to get as much of energy, so there will be decline in the reproductive function. And because ovaries produces estrogen, therefore what exactly happens is when the female starts taking a lot of decisions and do in-depth analysis, the amount of energy supplied to the ovaries is much more reduced, and this leads to a dysregulation of estrogen, which further leads to mood swing and mood destabilization in the females. So even at the highest level, one who has reached to the top of the career, there is always a selection between the femininity or between the masculinity. So we already know that when the ovary led reproductive system is totally inhibited, under that situation the female works more like males. So masculinity and femininity are psychosexual in nature. It's a dynamic which is managed at the genetic level, physiological level, psychological level, and all such levels. And therefore, females are often limited to neocortex. Neocortex also manages the physical world, the physical objects, and therefore the females are much more oriented around the physical world, the physical objects. The reason being that they also will have to take care of their family, and that's at least what their body and genes desire or demands. You can always do other than what your genes want you to do, but then we already know there is always a consequence, and consequence comes to none other than you. Your choices determines your consequences. So the way that you take your choices, that determines the consequence. So come back again. So the female brain is much more limited to the neocortex area, or the midbrain and the neocortex area. And how do you know that this is true? Just give me a moment for me to have a little water. Thank you. So the reason the female brain belongs to neocortex, and how would you know the proof of this, is in the last 3000 years. It is estimated that the European females brain density has reduced from around 1500 cc to about 1250 cc. That's about 250 gram of reduction in 3000 years, which in evolutionary term is significantly detrimental. The reason that has happened is because the system has got, the men have built so many systems, different systems, where one doesn't really have to understand the world in very deep, but rather can limit oneself to a lot of physical world and still can have a high functioning life. And therefore, the females are much more non-executive or physical world driven. They are much more instinct driven, because it is the requirement of their body that the ovary gut system, even gut, which female gut has got a much diverse microbiome colony. There are a lot of other parts like vaginal microbiome. So females have got a large colony of microbiome. So any female is already a mother. Male body is also a host to a lot of bacteria, but female body bacteria microbiome, which we call, they are extremely high. And of course, you may already be knowing that in our body the microbiome percentage is about 90%, and human genes and human cells are only 10%. So females, because they have a lot of microbiomes, a lot of energy has to be supplied to those microbiomes, gut microbiomes. And so ovary, gut takes a lot of energy that the females have. Further, we already know that their rate of metabolism is pretty slow in comparison to the males, because their body has higher vagal tone or parasympathetic tone. The body is expected to take more rest, and therefore, because of this phenomenon, female brain is much more physical world centric. On the other hand, men do not have as much microbiome as the females have. Also, males are expected to work harder because the physiology is around that. And the males are expected to, they produce much more growth hormone, and they can sustain a lot of stress because of higher level of cortisol. Because of that, and they have a very high metabolic rate, and that is the reason in any dinner party you may observe a man to eat much more than a female, because the body is capable of converting the food energy, the preserved energy, into other forms of energy that body can utilize very fast in men. And that is the reason the prefrontal cortex, the cortex, the part of the brain, the 300 gram mainly, which lies at the front part of the brain, is much more well developed and much more active in male. We already also know that we already have all the genes required to make us complete human, but those genes are generally turned off, and we have to turn them on as we progress in our life. For example, a child is born with bare minimum genes and a brain size and cannot walk immediately after he or she is born. Therefore, the genes that drive the walking program is not unlocked unless, up till the age of, say, 6 months, 8 months. Okay, and that is the reason the male brain has a much more prefrontal cortex activation, whereas the female brain has much more midbrain and neocortex activation. You may be wondering, today are we not supposed to discuss about master-slave dynamics, submission? No, today we are going to understand the meaning of life, and this is one of the areas with which we are understanding the meaning. Now your brain is looking for the meaning, so if you do not understand how brain is functioning, you cannot find the meaning, right? So male brain is much more prefrontal cortex centric, female brain is much more midbrain and neocortex centric. Also, whatever we do habitually, that is, we do repeatedly, those routines get stored, muscle movements and routine get stored in a part of the brain which is called basal ganglia. So basal ganglia stores our habits, and that is obviously much more higher for the females because they use a lot of neocortex. And therefore, a female can easily do multitasking because they are not doing anything. It's an autonomic function. It's an automatic function. It's like driving a car. When you are driving a car, you can think, you can do other things. You are not really putting a lot of energy while driving a car because your brain can think, you can speak, you can talk, you can function. It is an automatic function that is part of the basal ganglia. So you can do multitasking while driving because you can talk to your co-passenger, you can talk to other people, you can think about something. That is an automatic function because those have been routines that have been played on by the brain from the basal ganglia. So it doesn't require to take any executive decisions, any choices. Of course, when there is a car and the other things, it requires some of those decisions making, but in comparison, those decision makings are very limited in comparison to the decision makings that the brain has to do in the real life. Alright, so if while the way that you are driving your car and your body is completely, your brain is driving that from the basal ganglia, and that's why you can do a lot of multitasking. The same way, a lot of tasks that the female does, their brain completely converts that into an automatic routine and stores it. So they can cook and talk at the same time, cook and do something at the same time, they can make sweater and speak at the same time, they can art and talk at the same time. So it is not that they are capable of multitasking because their body has to supply a lot of energy to the ovary and the reproductive system. Brain does a compromise that okay, I will be operating at much less energy than a male brain, and therefore it has to get more efficient. Becoming more efficient means thinking less, taking lesser decisions, and avoiding any other functions, which takes a lot of energy because female metabolic rate is slower. If they involve in a lot of complex thinking, the body has to then generate a lot of energy and give it to their brain. It can be given, but then the ovarian system will be devoid of the energy because you don't have unlimited energy, and therefore one system or the other will have to do the compromise. Either it's a gut microbiome which will be whose colony will be gut will be decolonized, or the reproductive system will function less. So there will be always hindsight. So female can grow and it's a choice, of course, can grow as much as in the career, can even get up to the Nobel Prize. However, the reproductive function will not function that well, and that is the reason. If you see, Most of the female Nobel laureates in science, they have never become mothers. A lot of them. And that has got nothing to do with misogyny and other things. All these keywords like misogyny and misogynist, whatever equality, these are phenomenon and principles of lazy brains, a brain which is incapable of thinking. Coming back, so the reason that the females do multitasking is because their brain has to do it. It has to store the routines in the basal ganglia so that it is not busy in the decision making, so that their reproductive system and gut remains active. That is the reason people says it is very hard for the female to keep words in their stomach. That's because they have a lot of gut microbiome, right? Now coming back, males on the other hand are extremely they have the ability to have a lot of prefrontal cortex. This is the executive function. Now, why females can do multiple tasks and why male can't? This is the basic reason. The reason being, we don't have anything called free will. Let's say if I'm moving my hand, much before I am aware that let's say I'm placing my hand over here and I want to move it. This is my motion, but much before this motion happens, my brain has already generated this signal. After generating this signal, after 350 milliseconds, I am getting aware that my hand is moving. So there is nothing which is on our hand. The brain decides, and that's all. I am moving my hand. This is known as the readiness potential. And readiness potential is something by means of which whatever muscle you want to use, and brain is a muscle, heart is a muscle, all of these are peripheral muscles. Brain already generates the signal even before you are aware of. So pretty much your entire system works automatically in the autopilot mode. However, we have the ability to stop the signal. So we can decide what not to do. We cannot decide what to do. Brain already decides what to do. Let me repeat again. You cannot decide what to think. Brain already decides. You can only stop brain from thinking that. You cannot decide what you want to do in life. Brain already decides. You can only decide what you cannot. So this is called free owned. So no human being has got anything called free will. Nothing is your choice. Brain already decides. The only thing that you can do is stop that. And that is the role of the executive function, which is in the prefrontal cortex. So, a male brain has or expected to have much higher executive function and decide what it doesn't want to do than a female brain. Because it's encoded, most of the things are encoded in the basal ganglia. So when a female sees somebody with that's a Mercedes car, and a male sees somebody with a Mercedes car, both of their brain wants that car. It's common. But the male brain has higher ability to stop that thought and tells itself, no, going from point A to point B doesn't require a Mercedes car, for example. We may take a normal car. So a male and female sees the same thing. Both brain will want that, but male brain has more ability to suppress that one in comparison to the female brain, because female brain is much more physical world centric, and in the physical world the desires are higher. They have lesser executive function because their body allocates a lot of energy towards the ovarian system, ovarian gut system. In comparison, because male has less gut bacteria, no ovary, they do not have to uh, allocate those much of energy. They supply more energy to the prefrontal cortex. So amount of energy being supplied in the male brain, an amount of energy supplied in the female brain are completely different. Alright, so male brain has the executive function. This executive function, as we know, like any other thing, is not given as you born. It has to be unlocked. It has to be engaged, and you have to leave a lot of decision on your executive function. And you have to develop the executive function. You have to slow down your other body parts, because if you have to develop your brain, then other body parts have to slow down. You have to slow down, because executive function is a slow down, because you cannot decide what to do. You can only decide what not to do, when to stop that signal, and you have that 350 milliseconds only to stop that brain signal. And that work is being done by the prefrontal cortex. Prefrontal cortex also has our consciousness and bridges the consciousness and awareness, and therefore males have much high consciousness. A man has much higher consciousness than a female. Again, it is not given. Men are having X and Y chromosome. Let me remind you, X chromosome still contains 95% of the gene since last 10 million years. Y chromosome, on the other hand, can adapt very fast and is now having 3 to 10% of the genetic traits remaining from the beginning. A lot of genes have been gone. So, even a male is feminine code driven, and therefore it is quite natural for any male to have more desire towards the physical worlds. Physical worlds, because that Y chromosome is bare minimum. So one has to grow that Y chromosome. We discussed yesterday's class. In the episode number 15, we discussed how males should unlock their Y chromosome. So, considering the fact that you understood yesterday's class how to unlock your masculinity, then once somebody becomes a man, the executive brain takes over the decision making. Executive brain is not if this then that brain. Executive brain is not if fever then paracetamol, if stomach pain then antacid. It's not that brain, that's a neocortex, because that is a lazy brain that limits the amount of processing, because that has to be given to ovary. But a man doesn't have an ovary, and if he is not using for females, it is their requirement. If they keep on assigning more, if they keep on developing more and more consciousness, they will become less and less feminine. They will not feel anything. And if they find it's a choice of life, a female can choose not to feel anything, to remain as dead, to remain completely disconnected from herself. It's a choice. It's a choice. So a female may choose to live up to the age of 100 without feeling, without getting connected to herself. But a man cannot do that. I'm feeling extremely dry today. because this topic is so intense. It's just completely draining me off in no time. And apologies for this short water breaks that I'm having to take today. Now, so a man has much more prefrontal cortex, which slows down the thinking. Whenever a man desires something, the prefrontal cortex analyzes and says, no, not required. A man thinks, okay, what about this? Prefrontal cortex thinks and says, no, you don't have to think that, because prefrontal cortex takes an immense amount of energy, and a man cannot afford to think everything. Just like how a female brain wants to put everything in basal ganglia and make small decisions, make the decisions easy, a male brain cannot take smaller decisions, easy decisions. Leg pain, give a painkiller, doesn't work for a man's brain. So, a man's brain needs to understand, goes much deeper into the subject, have much more depth sense. It is not perspective driven. Female brain is perspective driven, because female eye vision is about 135 degree, male eye vision is about 35 degrees. So females can see a much higher range in a single frame. So their brain is very perspective driven. They see a lot of things in the brain. It's like a movie theater. But a male brain doesn't function in that way. A man's brain is depth centric, so he has limited access to the view, but he has more ability to sense the depth, which means that if a female stands, she can see a longer traffic, but her sense of how far a vehicle is lesser than a male's ability. So men can see only limited, but his ability to sense the distance between the objects is much more higher. It's a depth-centric brain. That's how the genes are. I have not made it. So because of this depth centricity, the brain's habit of looking into the depth, a man's brain tries to go multidimensional in any subject. It just cannot convince itself. It's an executive function driven brain. So an executive function driven brain cannot just use metformin for diabetes. It doesn't understand that 7.5 mgdl HBO1C means diabetes. It doesn't happen that way for the man's brain. These are the systems which are purely for the neocortex, decision making, threshold based value. If this then that, if this then that, if this then that. Man's brain is not like that. The man's brain figures out things. It doesn't follow rules. It creates theory. A man's brain creates theory. In a chess game, a chess player may use tricks, tips, tricks, patterns, and have shortcuts. But at the highest level, it is all about theory. So the world chess champion, for example, Magnus Carlsen or Bobby Fischer previously, or people like Mikhail Tal, they were extraordinarily good in the theory. That's the prefrontal cortex. And to become a good chess player, one has to become very good theorist. So once the brain, that is prefrontal cortex, is theory driven, it doesn't understand why it should be taking painkiller for the pain, because there is no two ways. The brain cannot decide this and this. Either executive function is going to take all the decisions, or neocortex is going to take the decision. You cannot have both. Okay? You may want in life to have everything, but that doesn't happen. Either you leave the decisions on the prefrontal cortex, or you leave the decision on the neocortex on somebody else. So the systems, man brain cannot follow the system, cannot follow the thresholds, cannot believe. It's not a believing brain. It doesn't believe because it's a depth centricity, right? And so man's brain wants to see something from all the different angles in order to build a multi-dimensional view of the reality. The female brain is perspective driven. So females use the word perspectives and views much more because they want to see something. So a pyramid is just like a pyramid for the female, but a man's brain would want to understand the history, will want to understand the composition of the pyramid, the astronomical aspects of the pyramid, the era of the pyramid, why pyramid is triangular, why pyramid is not circular, why pyramid is not rectangular, why pyramid is created on the place where it is created and why it is not created any other places. So that's how a man's brain work. And once a man's brain is working on the executive mode, it decides by itself, it figures out. It's a lot of genetic memory embedded into us. So man's brain has fought in desert, in cold conditions like ice age. We have survived ice age. We have survived jungles. We have survived many pandemics in the past. We have survived earthquakes, tsunamis, and whatnot. So our genes have all the abilities to figure out anything, all the problem, literally every problem that exists that we see. However, these are all part of the executive function of the brain, that is prefrontal cortex, which is also the conscious brain. And therefore, a man cannot be dictated. If a male has evolved himself back into a man, he cannot be controlled. Because control, we already know in past episode, the difference between the rules and the laws. A man is executive function driven. If you tell HbA1c 7.5 is diabetes, it doesn't believe. There is nothing called diabetes for that brain. A man's brain would want to understand sugar metabolism, sugar management at the level of cells, the transfer of energy from carbohydrate to sugar, the amount of sugar being consumed by the brain and the body, the amount of sugar variations when certain type of thoughts has been applied, why sugar increases, doing what it increases, what are the other pursuits in life, and each and everything. That's how a man's brain works. So, if you advice made for me to a man when his HbA1c is higher, in most likelihood he would not be able to take that. He is not agreeable. People say men are not agreeable. No, men are not agreeable not by their choice, because the brain works in that fashion. If you agree, then you will continue to agree to anything. And if you leave the choices on the executive function, then you will not be able to take any dictation. It's that simple. So what does this mean? What all of this means together? This means that a man's brain is much more focused at generating more dimensional views, looking at something from many different sides: literature, etymology, evolution, ethology, autonomic neuropathy, physiology, pathology, history, to have a deeper understanding of something. The theoretical view, the theory, the crux, the laws that drive something. So man discovers that, the core theory. It's very difficult to remember all the moves in chess, but it is much simpler. It is much simpler to understand the theory and then follow the theory. But it takes years. to start exploring the theory and become good in the theories. So, a man's brain is much more theory centric, man's brain. And we already know that's not given. So, one has to unlock all the genes to reach to that state where the prefrontal cortex takes over the decision center of the brain. So, once a male becomes a man, the frontal brain, the prefrontal cortex, the conscious brain takes over. He says nothing doing. The midbrain says, I won't drink, nothing doing. You're not drinking. The midbrain says, I want a car, nothing doing. I have better things to do. Okay. Midbrain says, but I want gold, nothing doing. I cannot involve in pursuit of the goal. I'm at this moment thinking, creating views. Midbrain says, no, but I want some girls. Executive brain, no. Let me build these models and the girls will come automatically. So, eventually, when a male becomes a man, the executive center, the boss, the prefrontal cortex, the one that separates human from the other animals, the one that got developed later, and the one that made us the species that we are today, that boss takes over. And no, prefrontal cortex, just like other parts of the brain, is not given. It's not like everybody has the same amount of consciousness. You have to go through that process and you have to, then only you'll be able to unlock that. So once a male becomes a man, the boss takes over. It's a boss. Once the boss takes over, doesn't care about anything else. No system, no relationship, no manipulation. The boss says, I decide. So, then also there is nothing called free will, but all you do is you give more and more understanding to the prefrontal cortex, more understanding, and let prefrontal cortex takes decision for you. That's also not on your aware brain's capability. Boss takes the decision. Boss demands a lot of data, which is lot of knowledge, lot of education, lot of understanding of the world. So you feed everything to boss, the prefrontal cortex, and then you allow the boss to take the decision. At that time, if the midbrain says, I want to go to movie, boss says nothing doing, I'm working, because it is supplied with all the energies. So the entire body then submits, entire body and brain then submits to that 300 gram of the brain. That's called submission. That means the body will sacrifice its energy that will be given to the boss. Other parts of the brain wants drinking, but it gives up. I cannot drink because the boss is working. So, once a male unlocks his true prefrontal cortex, that is, giving it detailed education, and that is not 5 points to become successful. It's like the theory. It's like a very strong theory. So yeah, there is nothing called, for those lazy brains who cannot think, there is no such thing called female chess player. And this is not gender bias. If a female player becomes as good as the male player, she has more prefrontal cortex. She can do that, just like any normal lady. But then her ovarian and the other functions will be completely shut down. She will be a masculine core in a female's body, just like how most of the males in today's society are just a female with a penis And this is not commentary. This is the biological reality. X chromosome has 95, Y chromosome is 3, which is dominating. So the executive function, the boss takes over and the entire body submits. The leg says that I want to go out. Leg has a memory, every day evening goes out, boss says, nothing doing, I'm working. Then boss says, look, I'm not able to solve this. I need to go to a walk. In the walk, I think, well, so body says, but I'm tired, but I have to go to work. Body goes to work. You want to go to the marriage of a friend's party. Nothing doing. I'm working, I'm learning. You cannot go to your friend's party. There is a lot of time waste. Okay, I'll not go. That's a mission. So your brain kills all its desires, choices, everything for that boss. It's the masculinity. It's like masculinity exemplified, amplified. The boss has taken over, the prefrontal cortex has taken over. You say to the boss, you should take that book. Don't tell me should. You deserve to be good. Don't tell me what I deserve. Congratulations. I don't require your congratulations. Keep quiet. I'm working. So, this becomes the master of man. And the entire body submits. Females can also do that. But then they are then the men in a female body. And however, it doesn't change the fact that they have still their brain's intensity to organize things around neocortex, basal ganglia would be much higher. But if the females unlock their prefrontal cortex, as they continue to unlock prefrontal cortex, yes, they'll understand the world better, they'll be more man-like. But the ovarian function will be gone, they will stop feeling, the feelings will not come. Yeah, they may say that I'm successful, things like that. Biology says the feelings will die because ovarian function will be suppressed. Ovary manages the estrogen. Estrogen function will be suppressed. The female may have amenorrhea or she may have early menopause. And that's how the life goes. Okay. So, who is the master? Master is prefrontal cortex of a man. So, a male unlocks the master and the master says, the master doesn't learn from anyone. The master says, this is what you have to do. The entire body follows. The master says, I want to go to work. The body follows. Master says, I don't want anybody around me at this moment. The body follows. The brain follows. The master says, give me all the energy. The entire body will give its energy to the master. So the body and the brain is trying to please the master, the boss, the prefrontal cortex of a man. They compromise everything. They have nothing. Boss decides. Boss decides when you have to wake up. Boss decides when you have to go to bed. Boss decides whom to talk to. Boss decides whom not to talk to. Boss decides whom you should have in the life. Boss decides whom you should not have in the life. Boss decides what you should do. Boss decides what you should not do. And then in that situation, there is no desire. There is, the brain says, I want money. Boss says, nothing doing. I'll decide what you want, what you don't want. So, there is nothing but the boss. He decides everything. So it's a prefrontal cortex that takes the decision even around money. How much money it wants, how much it wants to give, how to give, what is its objective. So that becomes the master. So master is the prefrontal cortex, the one where it's conscious. It unlocks an extreme degree of consciousness. So all those things that you hear, spirituality and all are nonsense, because you cannot reach to that level unless and until you have unlocked that prefrontal cortex. There is no spirituality that you can feel, because spirituality is a function of prefrontal cortex. It's a function of consciousness, and unless and until the consciousness is unlocked, spirituality itself is a business. Just by using the word spiritual, you cannot become spiritual. Understand that. It takes about 25 years of sacrificing all your desires to unlock prefrontal cortex and hand over your life to that prefrontal cortex. See, life is beyond the marketing gimmicks. There is genetics, there is all the other things. There is no such thing called my perspective, my view, my way, or the highway. There is a theory, there is a truth, there is a way, there are natural laws, the laws that governs you. They do not change based on how limited you want to think. So coming back, so this is the boss, master. And the master is completely autonomous. A master has complete autonomy. It doesn't accept anything on the face value. It doesn't accept the constitution on the face value. It doesn't accept any do's and don'ts on the face value. It decides, okay, this rule, it has to be followed in this way. This rule, this has to be followed in this way. That's how the boss evolves. Once the boss evolves, entire body submits to it. So for the females, now they have two choices. Either they become a man with breast and vagina. And this is not, you may want to say it a misogynist statement. The core becomes masculine. The prefrontal cortex, the stable part of the brain, the evolutionary brain, that becomes active. And once that becomes active, entire body submits to that. So the brain says, no worries, you're not a girl. I've taken over. And eventually, it's a masculine gene that is driving the female body. The way that those men who have not unlocked the prefrontal cortex, those men who have not lived their life to unlock this part, they are feminine core in a masculine body, in a man's body, feminine core in a man's body. And what that core says, brain sees anything, it desires that. It sees a car, it desires that. It wants, everything is object oriented. Everything is object oriented. Everything is if then else. If I get a degree, I'll get a good job. If I get a good job, I will have more money. If I have more money, I will get beautiful girl. Then if I have a beautiful girl, then I may get married. If I get married, I will have children. If I have children, I'll be happy. If this, then that. That's not how the boss works, the executive brain works. It creates its own laws and rules, regulations, everything based on last 1 lakh years of genes. Whatever the boss has seen over last 1 lakh years, they decide. So, males are most likely to unlock the prefrontal cortex because they do not have ovary and they are less micrograms. Let me repeat. Males, one who is born as male, are more likely to become man by unlocking the prefrontal cortex because they don't have ovary and gut to take out a lot of energy. The females can also unlock The masculine part, the one which is part of predominantly Y chromosomes, the prefrontal cortex part, then her gut and ovary goes down. She won't feel, she won't have any feminine feelings. That's all. So it's a, if you're born as a male, don't unlock it. Don't unlock your boss. Then it's a female body. It's a female core with a penis and testis. And if you are a female who has unlocked this, then you are a man body with a vagina and breast. Simple as that. The core is masculine. Core becomes that of a man if you take prefrontal cortex. You want to live as man, very well, but then your desire will be lesbianism. You will only get attracted by the girls, and if you look into a lot of female successful top, they prefer lesbianism. No, it's got nothing to do with the lesbians become reaches to the top because it's a core is a man. When the core becomes masculine, because as you go higher, become a composer, become a director, you become masculine. These are Y chromosomal state and genes, and once you unlock the boss, then you are a man. Your core is a man. Because your core is a man, you want girls. Pleasure. What if man will work a lot, then it needs pleasure, and then you want girls. You cannot have another man. You cannot give because a man cannot submit to another man. You see? Makes sense? So there is no such thing as choices and preferences. Those are lazy brain thinking. Yes, it is absolutely fine. Why? Because that person, that girl who has completely unlocked the prefrontal cortex, has gone into super consciousness, is a masculine girl. And she would obviously, she is masculine, and she would obviously need a female to give her the pleasure, to give him the pleasure. Similarly, a guy who has not unlocked this is much more object driven. Mercedes car, job, if this, then that, if pain, then painkiller. All the simplified system. If he is driven by the simplified system, then he will be much more likely to be attracted by a man than by a girl, because his core is feminine. So a feminine core wants a girl, wants a man. And that's the reason if a female comes and get entangled with them, the females generally become very aggressive because at least aggression is one of the components of masculinity, not masculinity, the aggression for hunting, aggression for bringing food, but at least there is an aggression, so it's a dominating female. So understand everything, there is no such thing as choices. All those banners and posters you see, that living life like this is my choice. No, you don't have any choice. The brain doesn't have any free will or choice. The brain is autonomous. It's your habit. So call it a habit. No choice. Brain can only stop the choices. Brain cannot make any choices. It's so simple. Alright, coming back. So boss is the master. All you do is submit. Submit in the sense. It's the boss who decides everything. Prefrontal cortex says stand up. I'll have to stand up. Prefrontal cortex says I need water. I'm thinking a lot today. I have to give water. I cannot say no. In the middle of the video, let me not drink water. Prefrontal cortex has nothing to do. It's quite intense. Take water. I have to take water. Alright. So prefrontal cortex is the boss, is the master. The body submits to the master. Body has to submit to the master. All the desires are to be given out, dumped. It's an extremely high state. So today, probably you are able to understand what is super consciousness, because then when you are looking at a pyramid, it's like its story comes in, its geography comes in, what material was used, how it was built, its architecture, its composition, the Egypt at that time period, the role of the pyramid, the all the other things. So if you think about a pyramid, you'll see a photo. I mean, most will see a photo and say, "Wow, looks great." But for prefrontal cortex, even just to think about a pyramid, it's a lot of energy. Lot of energy. The prefrontal cortex would want to know what are the animals which are there in the near the pyramid. If there is cement, why? If there is silica, why silica? Why not other metals? Why pyramid is like this? So just a pyramid will overload the prefrontal cortex with so much of information that the entire body will get tired just by the thought of that pyramid, amount of depth at which prefrontal cortex is looking at it. So the body will entirely give up, it will get tired, it will completely go out, it will not feel anything else, because the body is pleasing the master. The master says pyramid, it gets all the data, body gets tired. That is called submission. The meaning of submission is giving away all the choices, desires, wishes to a master. A master is the autonomous entity, the boss who decides, who analyzes, who runs the show. The autonomous topmost entity is the boss, and all the other parts of the body. So it's just 300 gram. Can you imagine if your weight is, let's say, 80 kg? 79.7 kg is submitting, is giving away their everything to a master. That's a master. So a master is, let's say, 1 in. So if you note that 300 divided by something like 60 kg, so 300 by 30, so 300 into 10 is 3 kg, 20 is 60 kg, 2.5. So almost the master is taking care of 225 times. So 25 times masses is giving itself to the master, and the master is taking care, it's controlling, it's saying, get up, you get up. It's saying heart, come down, heart comes down. It tells heart, go higher. So everybody is waiting for the master to give them the instruction from hands. There is then, so master decides. The brain wants to just end the video because it's already crossed 1 hour. The master says, no, you're talking about me. You have to complete discussion. That's how the prefrontal cortex takes the control of your body and brain, and it's called the master because it is autonomous, because all the other entities are dependent on that master to tell them what they should do. The master takes the decision. It's a decision center, analysis center, knowledge center, education center. It decides what to do. It doesn't care what other thing, doesn't think. It's just autonomous. In that case then, Rest of the other body is acts like a slave. Anything works in the master-slave dynamics. So anything else acts like a slave. The master decides which direction we have to speak. The master decides what the hand should do. Master decides what feet should do. Master decides how the eyes should be. Everything is decided by the master. Then the rest of the body follows that. Rest of the body is then slave. They are all bind to the master. So it's like this model where there is a master and each and everything. So master says, stop hearing what that person is saying. The ear stops. Master says, don't look into that message. Eyes, even if you put that message in front of that, eyes will not read. Because they have submitted to the master. They don't have free will. They are following the master. Why? Makes life easy. Alright? There is no local decision making. Master tells what to do. And they follow. That is why such bodies remain much more composed, because there is an extreme decision center which is autonomous. So the body knows there is no influence from outside. The body knows, the body parts knows that we have our own man which is taking control of us. He knows better than us because he is getting, when it is pyramid, he is thinking all the data about the pyramid. So he will not take wrong decision. Let us submit, let us do less work because they have to please master. So they do, they submit and they follow their master. This is called submission. Then the entire body and brain becomes the slave. Why slave? There is no freedom. There is no freedom. And our body becomes the slave of the master. Whatever the master says, the body follows. Alright? And because the master has to be kept in the good health, good system, the body takes the pain. It takes less energy. That is pain. The body has to do what the master says. It has to work when the master says. That is taking orders. So body is taking orders. Organs are taking orders. Organs are in pain. They are sacrificing their energy. They are in pain. There is a bondage. Each organ is bound with the master. There is a master-slave clock that works. The slave asks, what shall I do, master? Master, wait, I'll tell you. The master says to eyes, don't look into this message. Even if you take that message, eyes will not read it. The master has said not to it. Complete submission. And the eyes will not just go out and do anything which the master doesn't like. So the master says, there might be opportunities. Eyes, please look deeper into that. There might be danger. Just look deeper into how somebody's feet is, which direction is. The eyes focus will be on the feet of the person. The master has said. So therefore, when you unlock the masculinity and somebody becomes a man, the other part of the brain and the body becomes the slave of that superconsciousness. And if a female unlocks that, it is again the man. And so the female becomes masculine core and feminine body. But in such a situation, females suffer because at least to some years their body has menstruated. They have had puberty. After puberty, the ovarian system got developed, that remains, but you are suppressing part of an organ system. You are giving away one organ system. You are giving away part of the body. In that case, the brain, even though there is an executive function which takes over, the other part of the brain continues to pinch it. You have hurt us, Master. You are not, Master, you're not giving us. Our ovary is not there. We have lost our ovary. We have lost our reproductive system. Master, please don't do it. Master doesn't have all such things to do. Executive function is meant to take over all the decisions analysis. That is why human race has progressed, because men built systems which eliminated the need for the females to take executive decisions so that they can have a much more object-oriented and happy life. Because if the men could not do that, then the females would have had to take as much of energy, give it to their brain, think, and then their reproductive function would have been suppressed. And such females, just like man, cannot feel. And therefore, they cannot pursue the objects, worldly things such as, I don't know, music, car, nothing. They just become that. So that's how the submission works in a man's life. When man submits to that, the master itself also is not independent. The master finds it's very hard to function autonomically. And therefore, the master says, master needs a god. And that's why a man submits to a god. And once somebody reaches to that level, one would understand what is God. Nobody who has not reached to the super consciousness level will feel God. It is so simple. Just because you have temples and mosques and all those things and religion, you cannot feel God, because it's the super consciousness that is looking for the God, and unless and until you have reached in the super consciousness, you cannot feel God. Alright? So, man, because this is a 300 gram, it doesn't have anybody. It has to take care of all the other things. It is responsible, accountable. People, it gives pain to rest of the body. The prefrontal cortex, the entire body and brain tries to please their master, follows their master. Master builds the routine, the discipline, it gives them the discipline. It gives them pain, master gives them pain. It humiliates them, whatever their choices are. It strips them of their choices. Why humiliation? I is supposed to see. The master says, don't look into the message. I looks into the message, it can just look into the message and still not read. Humiliation. The eye is stripped of its bare minimum function of seeing. The master says, the bugger is not saying right. So even when somebody is shouting, the master says, close your ear. The ear closes down. It's a humiliation, because the ear is stripped of even is basic functionality, because master thinks and decides, because the master says you cannot hear that. Then master says, birds chirping, I want to hear that. So the ear, it completely overlooks any other noises and tunes itself to hear those birds chirping, because master wants that. No freedom. So it's a slavery. The entire body gets enslaved by the master, and master itself cannot function autonomically. Anything requires something on its top to function, and that is God. Only a male, when reaching up to the highest degree of masculinity can realize God, can feel God, because the prefrontal cortex drives that super consciousness. Correct? So this is our first part of master and slave. Today we understood how our body submits to its master, how rest of the body becomes slaves. What is humiliation? What is pain? How the body is bind. It's like master is controlling the leash of eyes, ears, everything. And why a man is devoted to God? Because there is no other ways. Prefrontal cortex, the master, also needs to be under higher authority. Otherwise, it becomes tyrant. If such a powerful part of the brain is left unleashed, then that brain can pretty much damage complete human race. And that's why even the master has to be put under some authorities. Such a powerful brain that is unlocked, 1 lakh years of genetic memory, genetic decision making, cannot simply be enslaved by anyone. That master cannot be enslaved by anyone. That is the reason there requires a God. And once somebody reaches up to that mastery, he unlocks the God. The others cannot understand what is God. And you should not try to understand the God either. There is no God for those who doesn't have that mastery. The God exists only for the mastery. And for those, I'll explain the concept of God in some other day. But today, we understood what is submission, what is slavery, what is mastery. We have to take another episode of understanding master slave in the human dynamics. So I hope today's episode answered a lot of your questions. And I strongly believe that you are going to rewind this episode many times because you might not have heard this ever. You are going to explore, you are not going to take my words on the face value, you are going to explore, study, build your prefrontal cortex. And for my female readers, don't worry, I'm going to suggest you tomorrow how to have your ovarian system and yet be very, very conscious. I'm going to give you the right ways to connect with your God, the spirituality, without compromising on your reproductive system. With that, this is Rupam, and we come to an end of this class. We'll meet you tomorrow. I'll come tomorrow and take this discussion of master slave forward into human relationships. So don't miss tomorrow's class. Be very, very focused. Keep yourself ready for tomorrow's class and the sessions. And please do get the books. Intimacy Lost for Man, The Birth of the Looker, which takes you through this journey, this emotional journey of unlocking your superconsciousness and become intimate, bring intimacy into your relationships, which is an extraordinary multi-dimensional story. And you can get it from the link below, from our website directly, and you can also check out many other blogs of mine in the same website. Also, you can read, you can have a lot of self-assessment tests going into that site. So it's a platform made for you, completely free. Explore it. But the book, of course, you have to meet the printing charges. You have to buy it. Hope you will read it and take control over your life. Thank you. Have a great day.